Soil is a vital living ecosystem that supports plants, animals, and humans. It's teeming with billions of bacteria, fungi, and other microbes that are the foundation of a complex ecosystem. Viewing soil this way reflects a fundamental shift in the way we care for it. Welcome to the Soil Health Podcast from Menoken Farm.
Well, this is Jay Fear, Soil Health Specialist with Natural Resources Conservation Service here in Bismarck, North Dakota. And today we're at the Edible Landscapes Conference. And it's a 2-day conference here at Bismarck State College. And with us today is Lana Shah, Southeast Research Farm at Red River, Saskatchewan. And we want to talk a little bit with Lana today on intercropping. And when we think intercropping or we have intercropping discussions, Lana, your name invariably comes up. And we look at you as probably somebody that really worked with us in terms of the foundation and foundational items as you started to put those together with your research. And but to start the podcast, maybe you just share a little bit about who Lana is. And I know you shared with the group earlier, you know, in terms of a farm background and those type things. So maybe you we'll start today with just who is Lana Shah.
Okay. So I went to university in Saskatchewan, U of S, and for about 20 years I've been working in either extension or research roles. And I have 2 kids of my own and 2 stepkids that are sort of my own. And my husband is actually the technician for the farm. He used to work in the oil patch, and so now I have a husband technician. So that's it's sort of like a family research farm, but not really. That's a little bit about me. And
yeah, very good. Moving right into the topic, I took some notes while you were talking to the group today. And one of the things that you talked about made a lot of sense, and it was taking a crop that's possibly weak on its own or has production issues that are always a little difficult to work with on its own and combining it with a different crop. And so is this something that you started out with initially, or is it something you saw evolve more? Or tell us a little bit about how that came about.
I think it's something that I learned as we were working with the chickpea flax, or just observed that one of the reasons that it just seemed to work really well is that the chickpeas were always one of the highest potential value crops in our province, but their acres were really quite low because it wasn't reliable, it was risky, and there was just really inherent problems. And I saw as an opportunity. And I've always thought flax was a good crop, but there's just these issues. And so then when I saw they were just working so well together, that's something that seemed obvious to me at the time. And then talking to some of the other farmers that were early innovators, they saw it much the same. That they were growing different crops, that we want to be able to grow specialty crops because they're high value, and one of the reasons that they're high value is because they're hard to grow. So that's a low-hanging fruit for intercropping.
And the way we see that play out, then it actually made both of the crops stronger, and I think that's obviously something that everybody can improve on their production system on. So the other thing that we heard you say was that make sure you can separate them before you plant them.
If you plan to separate them, make sure you can separate them before you plant them, not just I'm pretty sure. And that also means that if the seed is cracked, if you do some damage to your pulses, that you can still separate it from whatever that smaller seed is. And if there's 10% of your crop that you can't really separate, that ends up being a mix, what is going to be your market for that? There may be a feed market that could work out really well, but ideally you've got maybe a feed market in mind. So those are things that need to be thought about quite seriously, and line up how is this going to be separated and who is going to do it, and figure out what the costs are going to be so that this isn't a surprise after the fact. Because I heard from a seed cleaner in Fargo this summer that they do not appreciate having somebody come and arrive and try to make it their problem to separate some crop and then have to negotiate over a really high separation bill at the end of the process. This is all things that should be thought of and arranged before you even seed.
I think it's just do your homework first, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
you're stepping into an arena that you might not be all that comfortable in initially or that knowledgeable initially. So for sure, do some homework.
I consider this advanced farming technique, and you treat it as such. It's not a whim that you just decide, oh, this is a trend somebody else is doing, so I'm going to try it as a whim on last minute. You're better off to spend 6 months planning it than do it badly the first time and then give up.
Absolutely, because we'd like to see success.
Yes.
Yes.
Success breeds success, and whereas a failure just puts a big damper on things, which is why I don't mind getting calls from people. I would rather people try this and be successful than go on some half-baked ideas and instructions or out-of-date information and then fail at it, and
Right.
then it's just proof that intercropping doesn't work, but instead of proof that you did it with poor instructions.
Well, something you've been able to achieve, which I think speaks well of your efforts and speaks well of the ag community you work within, is the farmer interaction. And so not only are you doing the research on the farm, but then there's the interaction with the farming community who have become quite vested in the entire process. And so as we talk to farmers who have done this, and as we talk to yourself, we see that unfold as kind of a common theme. So did you see that initially as this was the way forward, or is it something that occurred as you went down the road, or?
I think it just happened. Maybe it's because I'm that isolated out in a very rural area, and a lot of it happened on Twitter. So on Saturday morning, I'm bored in Redvers, Saskatchewan, and start, talking to some farmers about what they're doing and who's doing some intercrops, and just building some sort of social media relationships. And the first intercrop event that we had 2 winters ago, I think, was largely people that had made connections with each other over social media, over Twitter.
Right.
And we basically had a big Twitter meetup, which was really exciting because we had already been talking over social media, and that was the first time that a lot of them had met in person to all talk about this. So it wasn't something where I had a plan that this was going to all happen this way. It just sort of unfolded. I've kind of stumbled my way forward and found myself at the front of a bandwagon. And I was waiting for somebody else to organize this and trying to convince other people to take this and run with it. And when nobody else did, I kind of got mad and did it myself.
Well, however that occurred, it was a good thing. And something that my understanding is somewhere in Saskatchewan in the neighborhood of 100,000 acres approximately, give or take. No way to know exactly, but we're somewhere in that area. That's a significant acreage. And so it's
commercially significant. It's significant as a trend. I think it's probably doubled since 2018.
Exactly.
And people tend to keep asking me, how much longer is this going to last? And are you still getting asked to go and talk at talk about intercropping at events? And I say, yes, I'm still getting asked. I'm getting asked at bigger and bigger meetings. So there's some people that just keep waiting for it to fizzle, and I suppose it's possible it will, but I'm not going to go around trying to make that happen. I'm trying to meet the needs of people, answer questions, and my enthusiasm is contagious, and it just keeps going.
Right. And I see it so much too as a tool to bring diversity into a cropping system, where sometimes could be due to the length of the growing season or maybe a bit more of an arid area. There's combinations of reasons why maybe a cover crop could be difficult to establish some falls, but here's a way you brought diversity to a cropping system. And so one of the things that I always try to look at is, did this action increase diversity in this landscape, yes or no, at the end of the day? Yeah. And for sure it did. And so it was an opportunity to bring in more than one crop type. And so from that viewpoint, I see it as something rather strong that plays a role, and that is, I certainly wouldn't look at as a fad or anything else. I look at it as strong economics and strong diversity within a cropping system that definitely can make this entire thing more resilient. So with that said, one of the things we've all been dealing with are in our cropping resource concerns, and you brought it out and you used the analogy of a two-legged stool. And I thought that's a pretty good analogy because of really what we're up against when we are trying to rely solely on a monocrop type environment. So maybe share a little bit your thoughts on where you kind of been with that. And obviously we know that the intercropping is something that you're looking at to address this, but I'd like to hear from you a little bit on that topic.
Okay, it's been a bandwagon for me for quite a while that only growing 2 crops is not a reasonable goal. It's not even really acceptable as just a status quo, and we really need to be working at solutions to that. And I know that extension and government and everybody has been trying to do that, but this is just a new way of addressing that problem. Instead of them saying, well, we should convince them to grow monocrop peas, or we should convince them to grow all of these other crops that hypothetically they could grow. There's a reason that they're not growing them as monocrops in that area. So it's a way of just kind of throwing out the paradigm and saying, well, what if we grow 2 crops at the same time? Maybe some of these crops that people don't really like to grow will actually work. And that's why it's kind of taking off, because we're so far outside the box. We lost the box and we can't really return it anymore.
Yeah, I think we lost that. And is that where one of your quotes kind of comes from then? Is that a bit of the basis of why not intercropping, or if not now, when? I heard you mention both.
Yeah. It's some of that's coming from Colin Rosengren, who is such a he's a one of my
early adopter,
early innovator, genius farmer people that he when I call him, he answers the phone, and we I bounce ideas off of him. He's a resource for me, and he's been waiting for this to happen for 10-15 years, since he's had picked up on some of the work that was done down at Carrington and started implementing it, seeing it worked. He's an inventor, and I like surrounding myself with genius farmers. And I don't know why there aren't a whole bunch of research people out at those farms, but they don't understand and know what a treasure some of those people are. They just don't understand. But I grew up on a farm, and I know that there's some very, very smart people that farm that don't, that some of those ideas you don't get at scientific conferences. But that's, it's just a little bit of a different mindset.
Well, one of the reasons that we wanted to invite you to the conference to speak was just what you're speaking to right now, that you have this background, and you have this background not only growing up in a farm, but your ability to bring in the individual farmers and connect with them and make this a collaborative effort where everybody gains. And so that in itself we feel is quite unique. So for that, we certainly commend you. Yeah. But just to kind of bring us to close here, maybe you'd share a little bit your Twitter handle, some of that type of information
Okay.
for people who would like to go a little further down this topic.
Okay, the hashtag Intercrop Innovators, all one word, is probably the quickest point to find me and a whole lot of other people that are doing intercropping. At SE_research farm is my Twitter handle, but if you look up Intercrop Innovators, probably 3/4 of the posts are me. But a lot of the time I will use that to retweet farmers who I find are doing some intercropping so that I can help to connect all the farmers. If that's one of the main things I've done is try to help connect farmers to each other so that we can all learn faster, because we can't all learn this the hard way. This is far too complex a subject for everyone to attempt to learn this the hard way. And I really appreciate the attitude of a lot of these farmers that they're willing to help each other farmers to learn. And they are businesses, they are competing with various other people in the marketplace. They don't have to do that, but they have been really willing to do it and seeing an advantage in doing it. And they have all learned from different people, other farmers, different researchers, so they've had a really good attitude. Like Derek Axton had said that he's not keeping everything he's learned in a silo, because he's benefited from so many other people, and he's been very generous about sharing that. And as long as that keeps going, I think this will keep building, and I keep trying to facilitate that.
Very good, very good.
Okay.
So we've been coming to you today again from the Edible Landscapes 2-day conference here in Bismarck, North Dakota. And we appreciate Lana Shah sharing some information today with us on the podcast. And with that, we're going to conclude. And so we thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
The Soil Health Podcast is a production of the Menoken Farm. Menoken Farm exists to foster natural resource education and systems approach conservation. This 150-acre demonstration farm, located just east of Bismarck, North Dakota, was established in 2009 and draws people from all over the world. The farm is owned and operated by Burleigh County Soil Conservation District, which has an office in Bismarck, North Dakota. Additional financial and technical support is provided by the North Dakota Department of Health Water Quality Division, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture.